And now, the moment you've all been waiting for. You're tuned in to Tapped Out. Hosted by Brendan Tobin and Sean Levine. Only on the BetQL network.
Well, we are just hours away from 2023. We appreciate you checking us out. It's Tapped Out right here on the BetQL network with our producer, Jake Noaker, and my co-host, Brendan Tobin, down in Miami. On the sports machine, Sean Levine. College football action right now. I'm sure some people have some money on it. TCU came into this game versus Michigan as an underdog, and right now they are rolling. It is 9 seconds left in the third quarter. Horned Frogs up 41-22. It looks like BT Michigan's about to push it in. Did you have TCU winning this game?
No. I mean, my co-host that I do weekdays down here in Miami with Leroy Horde, of course, a great Michigan running back. I can only imagine. I leave him alone during games. I can't imagine how upset he is. I'm looking at Jamal Hill right now to put an MMA to his big Michigan fan. He tweeted out just minutes ago, I'm done watching this BS. So,
well, he might want to keep watching because Michigan just punched it in with 3 seconds left in the third. So it's a 2-score game, extra point pending, 41-28. So if you have TCU and if you have the overs, you're looking pretty good. And then coming up later on tonight, it is Ohio State and Georgia. Ohio State right now getting 7.5. That's tempting when you can get the touchdown, the extra point, and the hook. You think they got a chance to beat the national champion Dogs?
Nah, dude, I don't think so. I feel like Georgia's like they're walking in there. It's their place. Like they're just gonna maul them anyway. But if they, look, what I'm hoping for ultimately, I want Michigan, Ohio State for the national championship. I mean, that's juicy as hell. Those teams hate each other. I could deal with the SEC being out of the title game. That would be nice. But I don't think so. I think Georgia's got this.
Michigan, by the way, just converted a 2-point conversion, so it's now an 11-point game. In theory, that is a 2-score game, but let's get off the football field and into the octagon while we're talking about champions. 2022 saw a lot of new champions in the UFC. Let's just start with what I think is the most surprising one, and I didn't think that we were going to see it for a while. It was Kamaru Usman. Now, of course, Usman ended up getting kicked in the head by Leon Edwards in the 5th round with not a whole lot of time left, and it really shook up the entire, at least UFC and fighting world. I think that Usman was so good for so long, even in that fight, that a lot of people just thought, okay, who's next? I don't know about you, bro, but I still can't believe that happened.
That one is I feel like all these lists that have come out, and there's a lot of good choices this year for like fight of the year, result of the year, knockout of the year. That was one of those, and I'm sure you get this, Sean, because people know that you like mixed martial arts, and we talk all sports, but that's one of those where people want to talk to you who aren't big mixed martial arts followers. They want to talk to you about that, and that was happening. It felt like with the Leon Edwards knockout, it felt like it was happening for a month. People wanted to talk about that result, and it just had everything to it because Kamaru was running out of opponents. He was lapping the division. He was dominating this fight. People were talking about him catching GSP. And for that to happen in such stunning fashion, it really did. It felt like it shook up the entire sport. It felt like it shook up the entire just the entire sports world, even for a few days there. That I think far and away was the moment of the year. And for Kamaru, now the climb starts back to see if he is going to be able to regain his belt. There's a lot of talk about his health. How much longer does he want to do it? He's not the youngest guy in the world either. So you thought about a guy who was maybe going to cement himself as possibly the GOAT to do this. And now, that all just literally changes in the swift kick of an eye. It was crazy, man. That one shook me up.
Well played there. Yeah, he's been champion since he took care of Tyron Woodley. That was all the way back in March of 2019. And then his first title defense was against Colby, then your boy Masvidal, then Gilbert Burns, then Masvidal again, then Colby again. And then it's crazy that Leon ended up being the guy, but that's how it is. All right, speaking of surprising knockouts at the end of fights, we got to talk about Alex Pereira knocking out Israel Adesanya. I mean, Izzy is another one of those guys that it just felt like forever he was going to hold on to that belt, especially at this particular weight class. I know he lost to Yam when he tried to go up. Man, Alex Pereira just has that guy's number. And the crazy thing is, tell me if I'm wrong, if they fight again, I think I put my money on Pereira.
Yeah, because you got to feel like his confidence is going to be even higher going in the next time around, knowing that that's always going to be there for him. I mean, Izzy had such a weird year too, because you think about it, this is guy's one of the most active champions out there. People were walking out of his fight with Jared Cannonier because they were so done with how dominant he was, how he couldn't be touched. And so you're taking on this guy who the only like they're literally the only reason Pereira gets the title shot is like we need storylines here because this guy's just beating everybody. And so he knocks out Sean Strickland, vaults his way all the way up to a title shot, and we're like, oh, that's a cute story, but like there's no way he's actually going to beat Izzy, right? And again, this is one where it felt like Izzy had this one in the bag, and Pereira comes out with just a monster shot to completely flip the script. And I'm with you, man. Like that's got to be in Izzy's head now. Like you lose in multiple sports to the guy, and his experience isn't even that great in the sport. And also, he look like I know he's a middleweight. He doesn't look like a middleweight. So that's another thing that's tough for Izzy going into this one.
And like Usman, Izzy the champion since 2019. First defended that title against Gastelum, then Whitaker, Joel Romero, Paulo Costa, and then he lost to Blachowicz when he went up a weight class, Vittori, Whitaker, Cannonier. So he took out everybody. And then again, it was his bugaboo, if you will, Alex Pereira, that is now 3-0 against him. And we're going to do a segment coming up later on called What Are the Odds? And I'm going to ask BT if we see that fight again, what are the odds going to be? Because I think Israel Adesanya is going to be a huge underdog when and if we see that fight again. All right, we're talking about all the belts that change hands here on the final show of Tapped Out. We appreciate you checking out the show. We'll keep you updated, by the way, what's going on in that TCU versus Michigan game. Right now, TCU has a big lead early on in the fourth quarter. Islam, man, it's funny because we've been talking about Islam for a long time, and now is finally his time. He took the belt off Charles Oliveira. I know Oliveira was your guy, and you and me alike. It kind of took us a minute to come around to Charles, and then once we did, we thought he was never going to lose. Now I don't think Islam's ever going to lose because he beat Oliveira.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing that is so shocking about the other two guys that we just talked about in Izzy and Kamaru is like you have to respect guys that start going through the division and going through it multiple times. And so with Charles, yeah, it did feel like, oh wow, he's doing this to some of the best strikers in the division. He's out striking them, and Dustin Poirier or Michael Chandler or Gaethje, like that's not even his thing. And how is he going to be stopped? And then Islam comes in there and just looks like an absolute buzzsaw with not a huge resume behind him. This is another guy that got to basically find a pretty easy path to the title, although not all of it being his fault. But yeah, he looks absolutely dynamite in this, and he's already set up for what is probably the super fight so far of 2023 when next year's calendar gets going. But I'm with you. Like you think just looking at his skill set, can he be a guy who matches the legacy, the resume of his guy Khabib? I don't know. I mean, it's a lot to ask because, this is a crazy sport as we've seen. I didn't think Kamaru was going to lose to Leon Edwards. I certainly didn't think that Izzy was going to lose to a guy who just got into the rankings, even though he lost to him in another sport. So yeah, it does feel like Islam looks pretty invincible after a win like he had, but the way this is going, who knows? Maybe Poirier gets him if they gets another crack at it. Who knows, dude?
It's crazy to think that we're even having this conversation, that Khabib's protege essentially has a chance to be as good as him. And at this point, now that he's got the belt, because you were talking about the fight that we're looking forward to coming up, you were referring to Islam versus Volkanovski at UFC 284. That's the ultimate super fight, both those guys holding onto a belt. The odds are just crazy. I mean, Islam right now is a minus 300 favorite at BetMGM. You can get the pound for pound best fighter in the world right now, Alexander Volkanovski, a guy that once Brian Ortega couldn't choke him out, I thought, okay, this guy ain't going out to anybody at any time. He's a plus 280 in that fight. I'm not saying I put my money on him, but it's crazy that Islam is that big of a favorite.
Yeah, and look, I'm guilty of this with Volk too, because it took me a long time to kind of buy into it with the Holloway trilogy, but he did such a number on Holloway in their final fight that like there's nothing else that you could say. Like it was such a dominant stamp of I'm the man that if you didn't have his respect for him, like it feels really silly to just look at a guy like this and be in the division that he's been in. Yeah, I guess we could look at a size thing, but this guy used to play like Australian rules football, so it's not like he's not used to messing with big bodies before. I don't know, man. Like that just seems too tasty to just leave on the table off of Islam. And then that's not a slight on Islam. It just feels like, all right, are we really doing this? That feels too soon. Like Oliveira didn't get that kind of respect that quick from the odds makers. Like it took a while even for them, whether it be the Gaethje fight or whether it be the Poirier fight, for people to kind of hop on that bandwagon and be like, oh yeah, he definitely should be the favorite here. Islam has like one big stage performance, then all of a sudden he's that dominant. Is it just a weight class thing? I don't know, but I feel like Volk's pretty tasty there for sure.
I actually think it's a styles thing, is what it is. Because if you mentioned the Holloway fights, three of Volkanovski's last 5 fights have come against Max Holloway. The other 2 against Korean Zombie and Brian Ortega. So he hasn't seen the style that Islam presents. Not that anybody presents the same style that Islam has, but it just, I feel like, styles make fights, and I understand why Islam's the favorite, just not quite that big. All right, while we're talking about belts that changed hands, Yuri Prohaska took the belt off of Glover Teixeira, and then ultimately now it's vacant, and it's a weird situation. But that was a great fight when we got a chance to see it.
Yeah, I mean that was pretty nutty, because there was another one where felt like his opportunity was slipping away. What a fight that was! That fight had everything to it. It was such a great back and forth between both guys. But this was a division where Yuri really had the opportunity to be, I think, the face of 205. He has this moment, this all-time moment, wins the championship, and it's just such a disappointment that he had such a serious injury that now the division's once again up in the air. It had the dud main event a couple of weeks ago where we were left without a champion, and now we have another title fight coming up very shortly to crown a champion who's not really going to feel like the champion. So that's that to go from one of the best fights, if not the best fight in a lot of people's minds of 2022, to where are we at with 205 is a little bit weird.
Speaking of champions, Michigan still alive, and they are making moves right now. Early in the 4th quarter, they got a turnover and they scored. They're down by 3. So we got 14 minutes left in the Fiesta Bowl. 41-38. Max Duggan is struggling right now. 9 of 23 for 141 and a couple of interceptions. TCU has the ball. 14 minutes left in the game. Up 41-38. Michigan is coming on. We'll keep you updated as that score changes. All right, speaking of coming on, it feels like in 2022, there were a couple of fighters that really made a name for themselves. Let's just go ahead and start with Sean O'Malley. I figured at some point Sean was going to get here. It's just the UFC gave him such a slow roll. But here we are. It looks like O'Malley's next fight is going to be for the belt. Are you surprised that that's what 2023 is going to bring us?
Well, he earned it. I'm not surprised, because he definitely went out there against Jan, and controversial as it may have been, he was very competitive.
Great
and I don't
fight.
think that
Great
a lot of people thought that Sean was going to even be competitive with Piotr. I think that people thought that he was going to get smoked. And you talk about that slow roll. I mean, that was by his design. Like, he really is, I think, the first guy publicly to take his career to have that fame and be like, I don't like the rate I'm fighting for. I'm going to be like a boxer, basically. Take nothing but tune-up fights, and I'm going to be the sugar show. And I think even some of those, you think about the injuries, you think about the late replacements, wasn't as impressive as it could have been when he burst onto the scene. So he needed this. I think he needed a fight to really prove that, hey, I'm at this level. I can be championship good in what I think is very arguably the best division in the sport. And yeah, he definitely deserves that title shot. I know that there are other people in that division, a guy that's beaten him that also is very worthy of it. I think that a lot of people have arguments at 135. It's stacked, but Sean did something I think a lot of people didn't think that he was going to do. And, all credit to him. He definitely, I think, was able to reinvigorate the sugar show, which I think was getting a little stale.
TCU 76-yard touchdown pass as you were talking, and they go back up by 9. They get 10 pending the extra point, dude. This game is absolutely crazy. And if you played,
how much time is left?
Go ahead and tear it. There is still 13 minutes left. It's 47-38 with 13:07 left. So that thing's not going anywhere for a while. We'll keep you updated, as I mentioned, as that goes on. Whose stock went down more this year, BT? And it was both recent, I would say, for both of them. Paddy Pimblett or Hamzat? Of course, Hamzat missing weight, and Paddy Pimblett just getting into it with people and got the gift decision. Who lost more stock in 2022?
I think overall, if you had to ask most fans, I think it's probably Paddy, because his decision seemed like BS and that he got a very, very favorable nod. but I kind of feel like it should be Hamzat because what he did, basically just neglecting the scale and completely throwing an event on its head and getting a super favorable matchup for him. I feel like Hamzat's stock should have taken a dip because we were even still sitting here like, what weight class is he, Sean? Do you know? Is he a welterweight? Is he going for the middleweight title? He claims nobody wants to fight him. Everybody's saying they do want to fight him. You know, I think it should be Hamzat who went down more, but I think overall, if you ask more fans, it would be Patty.
I kill everybody with Jake Noerker and Brendan Tobin on the Sports Machine, Sean Levine. Coming up next, a bunch of fighters retired, and we lost a couple of fighters in 2022, but there were a lot of great fights. A lot to talk about coming up next. You're tapped out on the BetQL Network.